Hi, this is Mike Nemeth, Marketing and Communications Director for the California Apartment Association. Welcome to today's vidcast, where we'll be reviewing some of the most important rental housing related stories featured in our newsletter, CAA's Rental Housing Report. And we're going to try to knock this out in about 10 minutes or less. So let's start with the number one story. Anti-housing bill lowers state rent cap, targets single-family rental homes. A proposed bill, SB 567, aims to revamp California's Tenant Protection Act of 2019, better known as AB 1482. At present, AB 1482 caps rent increases at the change in CPI plus 5%, and it can never go above 10%, no matter how hot inflation runs. The cap applies to apartments as soon as they turn 15 years old, unless already under stricter local rent control rules. For a little context here, when AB 1482 became law 3 years ago, the governor called it the nation's strongest statewide renter protection law. Now, SB 567 would tighten the rent cap to 5% or the change in inflation, whichever is lower. And it would expand the rent cap to previously exempt single-family homes and offer just cause for eviction protections on day one of the tenancy instead of after 1 year. Also from the state capitol, on pause, bill that would have allowed secret recordings of landlords. A bill allowing undercover investigators to secretly record landlords for potential discriminatory practices has been shelved for 2023. Although Assemblyman Kevin McCarty has withdrawn AB 1086, it could be reintroduced in 2024. Now remember, California is a two-party consent state, so secretly recording what's supposed to be a private conversation is not allowed. This bill would make an exception, though, for landlords. On to regional news, LA County rejects new emergency housing regulations. In Los Angeles County, the COVID-19 eviction moratorium, which applies everywhere in the county, including its 88 cities, will expire after March 31st. For 3 years, the Board of Supervisors has used emergency authority pegged to the pandemic to impose its eviction moratorium on the cities in the county. But with COVID no longer being an emergency, two supervisors tried to keep the eviction restrictions in place at the city level by pegging them to a different emergency, homelessness. Here's Fred Sutton, CAA's Senior Vice President of Local Public Affairs, testifying before the board this week before the proposal to keep emergency regulations in place went down in defeat.
Recently, this body had a discussion on board governance and process. This item was put forth to the public at 6:30 on Friday night. There are controversial and sweeping elements to this. There's a lot being discussed today. This board wields tremendous authority. The county exercised emergency powers over incorporated cities during an unprecedented pandemic. Now, a new emergency is being used to continue to exert that power, replacing current state laws, sowing more confusion, and overriding local decision makers. Cities can implement these policies on their own. The board is considering a very troubling precedent that will continue to utilize a very important and trusted power on controversial issues with no documenting support or discussion. We urge you to vote no, and we've also submitted a letter to the file. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Now for more regional news, a few hundred miles to the north, defeated San Jose anti-housing proposal that interferes with apartment sales. This week, a committee of the San Jose City Council rejected the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, also known as COPA, which would have required property owners to notify the city when selling a multifamily building and give nonprofit buyers the right to purchase that building before taking the listing public. CAA spearheaded the opposition, and over 100 speakers expressed concerns about the proposal's impact on the local housing market before that proposal went down in defeat. In the courts, judge rejects most CAA claims in challenge to Pasadena rent control. Back in December, CAA filed a lawsuit challenging Measure H, the voter-approved initiative that brought rent control to Pasadena, alleging that the measure was an unlawful revision to the city's charter. Judge Mary Strobel, however, rejected a majority of the association's claims, finding that the measure does not fundamentally alter the city's charter or its basic structure of city government. The judge also upheld the measure's provisions requiring that tenants make up a supermajority of the rent board. CAA is considering its options, including a possible appeal. Now on to compliance. Governor proclaims emergency in 4 more counties, rent cap included. The storms have just kept hammering California, and that's led Governor Newsom to expand storm-related states of emergency to 4 more counties. So now more than 80% of California's counties are under a storm emergency. And these emergency declarations trigger Penal Code Section 396 to prevent price gouging. That means the prices of most consumer goods and services, including that of rental housing, cannot be increased by more than 10% above pre-emergency levels. And finally, 5 ways new landlords can master property maintenance. This article offers ideas on developing a property maintenance plan, knowing your responsibilities versus your tenants, finding reliable contractors, and not getting too fancy when it comes to landscaping. After all, despite all the rain we've been getting, don't forget how drought prone California has been in recent years. That wraps up today's California Apartment Association vidcast. As you can see, it's a busy time in the halls of government and the courts for the rental housing industry. Visit CAAnet.org for more information on how the California Apartment Association is advocating on behalf of the state's ethical rental housing providers. Thanks. Until next time.